On a yearly estimate, hundreds of thousands of people go missing without a trace from all around the world. People go on uh, camps or on a trail, normally to wooded areas or forested areas, and they're right there with their family and friends. And just like that, in the blink of an eyelid, they're there and then they're gone. And very often they are never found again, or sometimes they are found again under very bizarre and mysterious circumstances, sometimes hundreds of thousands of miles away from where they went missing. A former police detective who used to work on these cases has written a book called Missing 411, in which he talks about many of these incredibly strange missing person cases. And today's story is taken from this book, Missing 411. Hi everyone, welcome to Freaky Fridays with Sonia. I am Sonia. If you are intrigued by the enigmatic, dark, strange, paranormal, mysterious, real life happenings from all around the world, then you've come to the right channel, because that's what I do. And I will be uploading a freaky video every Friday. So if that's of interest to you, please don't forget to subscribe and support the channel. If you do like this video and this kind of content, do leave a thumbs up, and do let me know your comments on this case in the comment section below. I'd love to hear and read what you think about this particular case. Also, before I begin, I'd like to give my usual disclaimer that this video is solely for educational and information purposes. I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video, and all of this information is just information that I have found on the internet and I have compiled in a story format for the purpose of this video. In case this kind of content is not suitable to you, I understand. If it is triggering in any manner, I completely understand. Please don't watch this video, or don't subscribe to the channel. We'll probably meet on another channel where I do more fun stuff, and which I'll start again at a later date. Okay, having said all that, let's start with today's video. On April 29th, 2001, 6-year-old Haley Zega was on an early morning hike with her grandparents, and they went to a very rural area in Arkansas. It's called the Upper Buffalo Wilderness Area, and a wilderness area is an area where no vehicles or no transportation or no sort of traffic is allowed, with the intention of keeping the wilderness and the wildlife and the entire sanctity of nature intact, hence the name wilderness area. So Haley and her grandparents, they went on this hike. They were on a trail. They walked for a while, and then they reached this particular bluff. Now, a bluff is a kind of a steep cliff. So Haley and her grandparents, they climbed up that bluff until they were about 200 feet off the ground from where they started. And they stood up on this bluff, and by this time it was about 11 in the morning. And they looked all around, and the scenery around them was breathtakingly beautiful. They looked at the forest around them, the birds were chirping, the sun was up, it was a beautiful day. They looked at the river down below. After they stood there and took in the scenic beauty, they decided it's time to head back home. So that's what they did, and they turned around and they made their way down the bluff again carefully, and they got back onto the trail and they were headed home. About 30 minutes into heading home, it was now about 11:30 a.m. And 6-year-old Haley, she suddenly spotted this little waterfall, and it was this beautiful waterfall, but it was off their trail. So she kind of, looked at her grandparents and she said, I want to go to that waterfall. Please take me there. Please take me there. So her grandparents looked, and then they kind of scanned the area, And they realized that in order for them to reach that waterfall, they would have to climb over a tree which was already bent over a cliff. So they decided against it because, first of all, they were her grandparents, so they weren't young. And they decided it's a little too dangerous, not only for them, but also for their 6-year-old granddaughter. So they said no. So Haley, being a typical 6-year-old child, she started throwing a childish tantrum, and she was like, no, I want to go there, you have to take me there. And her grandparents said, no, you're going to be a big girl now and you're going to listen to us and we're going to head home. So Haley sat down there on the trail. She wanted to irritate them, so she said, I'm not coming home, you got to take me there. And they said, no, Haley, we're not going there, we're going back home. So she said, okay, then I'm not walking, then you've got to carry me. If you want me to come back home, you've got to carry me. So they said, no, we're not going to carry you. We're going to walk slowly and you're going to follow us. So they kind of, just to mollycoddle her, they kind of took 2 steps and then they looked back. And then, she kind of grudgingly said, okay, whatever. And she got up and she was purposely walking very, very slowly behind them. And her grandparents were also taking baby steps, like 1 or 2 steps at a time. And every second they would turn at the back to ensure that she was there behind them. And at one point they kind of turned around. They saw that Haley was there. They took another 2 steps and they turned behind and she was gone. So the grandparents were, they were shocked at that moment. And the first thing that came to their mind was they thought, maybe she's gone and hidden behind the trees because she was doing everything to annoy and frustrate them. They kind of ran back and they started yelling out for her, saying, Haley, Haley, where are you? And they searched everywhere, but she had just disappeared without a trace. For the next 90 minutes that day, on April 29, 2001, both Haley's grandparents for 90 minutes searched the entire area. They went back and forth. They searched everywhere, shouting out for her, telling her, please come out if you're there. But nothing. She had just disappeared. So grandparents did the next best thing that they knew. They headed straight to the authorities and they launched a missing persons report. That very day, with immediate effect, the largest search and rescue mission was launched for 6-year-old Haley Zager in Arkansas. Hundreds of searchers on the ground. There were helicopters that were sent out patrolling the entire area, the bluffs, the cliffs, the river, the forest, and they were circling around searching for 6-year-old Haley Zager. There were many dog teams that were sent out. There was the National Guard that got involved. There were firefighters, including her, of course, her family and their friends. And they searched day and night, the entire area. But for 2 days, there was nothing. Now it's been 2 nights, right? So on the 3rd day, almost 51 or 52 hours into the search, hope was beginning to fade. All of a sudden, the search and rescue operations were in full swing. But way off into the river, almost 2 miles away from all of this happening, 2 random men who were near the river, they happened to see this little girl sitting and, dangling her legs in the water, splashing the water all around. They knew that there was a little girl who was missing. So they kind of went up to her and said, hi, what's your name? And she said, I'm Haley Zager. And they asked her, how old are you? And she said, I'm 6 years old. And there she was. They took her with them and they reunited her with her family, who were obviously ecstatic and they were ever so grateful. And first thing that they did was they took her to a hospital where she was kept under observation. And she seemed fine. For a little girl, a 6-year-old who had been all by herself for 3 days in the wilderness with no appropriate clothing or no food and no water, and obviously she's been alone in this entire area, but she seemed fine. There were a few scratches on her face and her hands, but other than that she seemed fine. She didn't seem like she was dehydrated or she was hungry. In fact, she was quite jovial. The hospital, after keeping her for a couple of hours, there was absolutely nothing wrong with her, and they said, you're good to go. So she was released. Now, Haley's case had gained a lot of attention in Arkansas because she had been found. So once she was released from hospital, she was sent home where investigators wanted to talk to her. They sat her down along with her family and they asked her, now you tell us in your words what happened. She said she wanted to go to the waterfall. Her grandparents said no. She was purposely acting out. She said she was walking, purposely very slowly behind them, and she kind of put her head down, and as she put her head up, there wasn't any trail. Her grandparents weren't there, and she just said that she was surrounded by a wall of trees. She was taken aback. She's 6 years old, okay? So she kind of is wondering what's going on, where's the trail, where are my grandparents? So that's what she said. She just found herself surrounded by trees and dense forest all around. Not knowing what else to do, she was calling out to her grandparents, and she started walking around, like trying to find her way, trying to look for the trail that she was on. But she was being led deeper and deeper into the forest, and she says that she finally found herself at the bottom of that same bluff, that same steep creek that her grandparents had climbed that morning. And she said by now the sun was beginning to set. So she climbed up that bluff and she stayed on top for the whole night. And the next morning, she woke up when the sun came up. And then she says that she climbed down the bluff, walked along the path, found the river, where she found a cave, and that's where she spent her second day. And then on the third day, she was found. So this is Haley's version of it. Now, investigators and detectives they are perplexed, and they asked her, like, but if you are saying that you were on that bluff the first night, how is it that the helicopters did not pick you up? Because that's all that they were doing. For 3 days, these helicopters were just circling the bluffs. They were circling those cliffs. And if you were on that bluff, they would have picked you up. These helicopters were equipped with thermal energy. So for sure, if you were there, they would have spotted you and picked you up. She said, of course I was on that bluff. Alicia took me there and Alicia told me to stay there. Alicia told me that if I stay here, they'll find me. But they didn't find me. So now her family and investigators are like wondering, like, who Alicia? Like, who is this Alicia? So they asked her, who is Alicia? She said, oh, she's my friend. I met her there in the bluffs. And she's the one who actually took me up. And she told me to stay here for the night. She was with me throughout. Immediately, obviously, the first thought that came to everyone's mind was that Haley had been through a traumatic experience. So maybe she created this imaginary friend in her mind to help her to cope with the situation, like a coping mechanism. So they said, you know what, let's just not talk about Alicia, let it be. We'll continue just asking her questions. So they said, so then, like, you're saying that the next morning you woke up and then you climbed down that bluff, but weren't you scared? Like, it's such a steep cliff. What if you had to fall into the river, or what if you had to slip? And she said, but that's what I'm telling you. Like, Alicia was with me. She actually was propping me up. Every time I went too close to the edge, she would prop me up and she guided me down, and she brought me down the bluff all the way down, and she walked with me. She guided me through the path to the river. She found me that cave where I stayed the second day. She was with me. On the third day, in fact, we were in the cave, and she's the one who told me, there are these 2 men who are coming and you go out. And she said bye to me, and she said that go and show yourself to them and you'll be found and reunited with your family. She promised me, said Haley, that she would reunite me with my family. They asked her, can you describe Alicia to us? And she said, of course. She's got like dark hair and she's got brown eyes and she's a little shorter than me and she's 4 years old. She's so funny. She tells the most funny jokes and she told me jokes all along. She kept me so happy. She sang to me. Haley went on to actually sing some of the songs that Alicia had taught her during those 3 days. She started telling some of the jokes that Alicia had told her during those 3 days. Now, with no other rational explanation, everyone thought, like, let's just leave it at that. It's her imaginary friend. Like, now, after investigators spoke to Haley, the media personnel wanted to talk to her because, like I said, this was a huge case in the whole of Arkansas. So media and reporters came in and they started talking to her, and she said the exact same story. So now all of this information is out in print. So this is being published in the papers, it's being televised on the news. And a lot of local readers from the local area, when they read the story, they realized that the description that Haley gave of Alicia was exactly the same as another little girl, another 4-year-old girl who had the same dark hair and brown eyes, and who was 4 years old and who was very jovial and who sang songs. And she had gone missing 23 years prior, and her name was Alana. And unfortunately, Alana was found dead in those bluffs in the same area that Haley went missing. All the locals started saying that Alicia and Alana were the same person, and she was probably like Haley's guardian angel, and she promised that what happened to her would not happen to Haley, which is why she was there with her all the time, and like she promised to save her and reunite her with her family. That's exactly what she did. Now, once this news came out, Haley's case got national coverage, and the common theory is that Alicia and Alana were the same person, and they were there as 6-year-old Haley's guardian angel, and saved her and protected her and reunited her with her family. Now, today Haley is about, I think, 27 years old. In fact, she has her own YouTube channel. I will link it down below, and she's created a video on this story. It's called Survival Story, where she talks about this entire experience of these 3 days in the wilderness in her own words. She says that she's very grateful to those 2 men who saved her. She also talks about Alicia, and she says that over the years, she never did have, like, people have told her many things, that Alicia was a ghost, or Alicia was an imaginary friend, or a guardian angel, or an entity. And in that video, Haley says that, she never did have any imaginary friend before Alicia, nor has she had an imaginary friend after Alicia. She also says that no matter who or what Alicia was, she will always remain like a very close part of her heart, and she will be eternally grateful to Alicia, whoever she was or whatever she was, because she saved her. So that's going to do it for today, guys. Leave your comments in the comments section below. Like I said, I'd love to read what you have to say about this case. And if you do like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you do like this kind of content, please do subscribe. If you want to reach out to me on any of my social media platforms, it's soniahaeems on Instagram, on Facebook. I leave it all down below. That's going to do it for today. So until I see you next Friday, please stay happy, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, keep smiling, and bye-bye.